few weeks ago, after a walk, I was thinking about a work situation that I found really troubling. It was involving some clients. I found myself really stuck in thinking about it and had been for a good part of the weekend. And I suddenly saw that all there is God, that all those troubling clients, they're just God. I'm just God. All this stuff going on around us is just God. It's all just God interacting with God. And I immediately lightened up. Suddenly, none of this seemed significant or even particularly troubling. Like it made light of everything. That would be an apt way to say it. I know the word God can be problematic or laden with baggage for people, and it's not really an important word here. It's pointing at something. For some reason, that word's resonating with me now, but you could use other words. You could say all there is being, or all there is consciousness, or all there is the unity, or probably a whole lot of other words. I'm going to use God, but I urge you to replace it in your listening if it's something that troubles you. What do I see from this perspective? Well, first, I see I've suffered a great deal in life, and usually with a sense of anxiety or a sense of burden. That's been kind of a background pair of moods through much of life. And really, if it's all God, that suffering doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't have to be there. I also saw that we're either recognizing it's all God or we're not. Most of the time, most of us don't. And that is the separation right there. That there's no actual separation. The separation is not seeing it's all God. That's the separation. And when you see it, you're no longer separated. In seeing that it's all God, what I see is that we're all trapped in systems based on our histories much of the time. To the degree we identify as something separate, then what we're doing is reacting from the historical structure that we're identified with. And we can't help it. It just does its things. And uh, and we do the best we can with that. We're trying to navigate with this historical set of patterns and practices. We can't help but be consumed by our own concerns when we think we're separate. It's inevitable. And those are always connected to our identity. And those then give rise to certain emotional responses that we're not going to avoid. I see that the evil we do to each other comes from forgetting that it's all God. In that forgetting, we can see others as separate, and we see their actions as potentially against us, and they may be against us based on them acting from their history. And we respond and react from our history, and the games begin. If I'm born a Palestinian and I see myself as truly separate from the Jews, then the history I've been exposed to will determine my reactions. And the same is true if I'm born as a Jew in Israel. That separateness, the blindness to that we're all God, gives rise to the emotions and then the actions in which we hurt each other. That doesn't mean, like seeing it's all God, doesn't mean that there isn't living life with all its activities. I still have to get up and brush my teeth every morning. and I have to engage in lots of conversations. Some I find challenging, but it does change my mood about the activities and the conversations. The activities are just what has to happen. They're just part of the unfolding. And my emotional responses, I see are reactive. So they're not really significant. Doesn't mean they don't show up, but they don't really mean that much. Like they couldn't not show up. And I see others in difficult responses. I know it's just a product of their history. The more I've been dwelling in this view and connecting to it, I found myself peaceful and more relaxed and intrigued. And I'm also been struck by how much my history has dominated my life. And I've been intrigued to look at that and to see how that's happened. In a way, it's a very simple perspective, but I see that it's not one I have generally seen, and I don't see most people as generally seeing it. I think that product of identification or the process of identification is so strong that it's hard to see past it. It obscures the view. I lose the perspective at times, get pulled back in to the identification and giving great meaning to certain responses. And then I remind myself that all there is God. And most of the time I find that that brings me back to a better place, a place where peace is present again. When this showed up a few weeks ago, I made a promise, and the promise was to share this perspective. So that's what I'm doing today. Thanks for listening.